So unless you have been living off-grid up in the mountains or far from society, chances are you have heard by now about the coronavirus that is going around the entire world. So I wanted to touch on this today because I think it's obviously a very timely and important topic, and I think that I don't want this to cause any fear. That's not my intention at all. It's more just to talk about being prepared for these type of things, which is nothing new. I've spoken a lot about this in the past, and I think that preparedness and homesteading really do go hand in hand, simply because we are, as homesteaders, we're prepared by nature, right? Just by nature of doing things like growing our own food, preserving food, learning how to make things at home, being resourceful, making things from scratch. That all counts toward being prepared for really whatever life throws at you. I mean, anything from, in good times, it's good too. There's lots of reasons to kind of work on being more self-sufficient just in our everyday lives. But especially in, crises or emergencies, it's really important to kind of have some of these skills, know how to do some of these things, and have a supply on hand just in case of anything. So I certainly would not consider myself to be like a prepper. And I think that preppers and homesteaders, although there is definitely some crossover, they are two very distinct groups. And I've heard it said before that not every prepper is a homesteader, but every homesteader is a prepper. And again, that's just by nature of what we do, right? You can be a prepper and just stock up on store-bought canned goods and boxes of things and processed foods. But then what happens when your supply runs out, right? Whereas with homesteading, we're kind of focused on being prepared, but in a sustainable way. So learning how to produce what we need at home as much as possible. And for a multitude of reasons, to be healthier, right? To tread lighter on the planet and be more sustainable overall. But self-sufficiency is another big reason for that. And emergency preparedness kind of just goes hand in hand with that. So I wanted to address this today just because I think that it is always better to be prepared than scared. And I see a lot of people out panic buying right now and hoarding toilet paper and freaking out, right? Because they're not prepared. And I think that these things, when they happen, the silver lining is that they highlight that we need to be more prepared, right? They maybe teach people that maybe we should think a little bit more about this and about our future and not be scared, but just be prepared just in case of anything. It's just never a bad idea. So I want to tell you a little bit about what we are doing to prepare for the coronavirus, because it probably will hit our community. We're on Vancouver Island in the Comox Valley. There are no confirmed cases on the island right now where we live. In fact, Canada so far is doing pretty well. I don't know the exact number of cases right now, but I believe it's still under 50 anyway. And as far as I know, we've only had one death. And that's the thing, is at the end of the day, we shouldn't freak out about this. The World Health Organization has declared the coronavirus, or COVID-19 as it's now kind of being called, they have declared it a pandemic because it has gone global. It does spread really easily and people are dying from it. But if we can just calm down and look at the numbers, I think something like 90% of cases tend to be pretty mild, like the common flu. And it doesn't seem to be affecting kids, which is excellent, right? I mean, that's some of the best news we could get. And it doesn't seem to be affecting too many healthy people under the age of about 60. For more elderly people and people with underlying health conditions, though, it can be a risk. So I don't think that we should take it lightly either. I do think it needs to be taken seriously and we need to be taking every precaution possible. But on top of just the virus itself, it's not just about that. When it's anytime we're in an emergency situation, it's not just the emergency itself that we need to prepare for, it's the aftermath, it's the domino effect of that. And so, for example, with the coronavirus, the domino effect of this can be that we end up being quarantined. All of Italy, the entire country is right now quarantined, regardless of whether they're healthy or not, because it has spread so rapidly there and they're trying to contain it. So even healthy people are now finding themselves basically stuck at home. So we need to be prepared for something like that. It can cut off trade, right? If people are being told to stay home and not go to work, factories aren't making things, they're not shipping things off. There can be huge interruptions in trade, as well as people panic, and people who are not necessarily prepared go out and buy up the grocery stores, as we have seen happen over and over again with multiple emergencies. Right now, the hot ticket item is toilet paper, and I'm not 100% sure why toilet paper and nothing else, like why there's such an emphasis on stocking up on toilet paper, because personally I don't think that's like the biggest priority in an emergency. But you can see the human psychology and the way people react in times like these. That can add kind of fuel to the fire and make things a little bit more tricky to navigate, right? Even if we're healthy, then we still have to think about, well, what do we do if we can't get things from the store? What do we do if we're quarantined and we can't get out? What do we do if things are not being shipped? Whatever, right? And make sure that we have the things that we need on hand, as well as the skills to use them properly, right? So for example, we have, cooking ingredients, baking ingredients, things like that on hand, but we've only ever ordered takeout or, DoorDash or whatever. We don't even know how to cook for ourselves. Well, then not having that skill can pose a problem as well. So obviously the time to prepare is well ahead of any emergency or crisis, but I thought this was timely to talk about it considering what's going on right now, and talk about what we have done, how we are kind of naturally prepared already, as well as the other things that we are doing right now while we have some time to make sure that we get prepared in case it does hit our community, which sounds like it's pretty inevitable the way it's spreading right now. So the first thing that we are doing is actually focusing on our health and on building up our immunity. And so I made up a big batch of elderberry syrup the other day, and we've been taking elderberry syrup preventatively because this helps to build up your immunity. So we're just being a little bit extra vigilant about staying healthy right now. Obviously, we're taking all of the tips from the CDC and the World Health Organization, and everything's about washing your hands. We are making sure that we're washing our hands a lot more often than we probably normally do. Just make sure that our immune system is boosted as much as possible, and elderberry syrup is a great way to do that. It's not going to prevent it. It's not a vaccine. It's not going to treat it. And that's what's kind of alarming about the disease right now, is just because there is no treatment or vaccination. It's up to your immunity to fight it. And that's why people who have underlying health conditions and who are older with weaker immune systems tend not to be faring as well as other age groups. So we're just trying to make sure that our immunities are boosted, and elderberry syrup will help to actually boost your immune system so that it can naturally fight viruses off. It's also great because my daughter loves it, but it's not like over-the-counter medication, so I don't have to worry about giving it to her as much. So she's been we've just been using these little shot glasses, and I do just about like a third of the glass for each of us, a couple times a day right now. For my husband and I, we've also been taking some fire cider, which we make our own fire cider. I will link to the video on how to do that below. But so if you want to make your own, because that's got all sorts of good antiviral herbs and properties in it. So we're just kind of naturally boosting our immune system. We're also making sure that we do have over-the-counter medications that we use when we're sick, because as much as I'm all about the natural medicine, there's certain things like Advil. I need to take an Advil when I have a really bad headache. There's just nothing else that I've tried has even come close. So we make sure that we have like pain relievers like that. We have some children's Tylenol and some basic things like that, just in case, again, that we can't get out and somebody does fall really ill and the natural remedies aren't cutting it. I'm a big believer in kind of blending natural medicine with kind of more modern medicine. But luckily, none of us have any conditions where we require prescription pills. If you do, I do recommend trying to stock up on a supply, stock up on a 30-day supply if possible, at least for a couple weeks, because if you get quarantined, it tends to be about 14 days that they're doing that for. So aside from boosting our immunity, and along with that, we are just making sure that we get a lot of sleep, that we are getting, I'm still trying to get exercise. I've been avoiding the gym the past couple of days. Because I've had a little tickle in my throat, and I think it's just cold season. My daughter, brings things home from school, but I don't want to put anybody at risk. It's not worth it right now. So I've kind of been staying away from the gym. Maybe it's just an excuse. But, get out, get some fresh air still. go for walks, right? If you are, you know, even if just sit in your yard, just get out, get some fresh air, move your body, get lots of sleep, drink lots of water. So those are all kind of things that we've been doing to make sure that we stay healthy. Now, the next thing is making sure that we have things on hand in case we are quarantined or we can't get certain things. Okay, so I'm going to be the first to admit we got toilet paper too. Okay, because it's not unwise to have things like this on hand. So we got a big box of Kleenex because it was on sale at Costco. And honestly, these are things that I would buy anyway. I probably wouldn't have bought a second pack of toilet paper. We had this one already, but because everybody was buying it up, I wanted to make sure that we had enough on hand. And I think this is part of the mentality. Part of it's this panic buying because what if, you know, we're quarantined, but it's also like when you see everybody else buying it up, I think, well, it keeps being sold out here. People are posting online that it's sold out. And what happens then when we do need toilet paper? So this is something that I would do anyway if I saw that stocks were running low, simply because I want to make sure that we don't run out. But I'm not buying up like 500 rolls. I'm not, you know, and I'm not only walking out of the store with toilet paper. You know, there's other things that we need to be thinking about as well. But I'll admit, we got the toilet paper too. So food is, you know, probably one of the most important things you're going to want to make sure that you have on hand at home, aside from, say, maybe prescription medication if you need that, right? That's vital. But we want to make sure that we are stocked up on food. Now, we have not really done much in this area because we are already pretty stocked up just by nature of how we live. You can see behind me there, I've got some of our winter squashes still, some spaghetti squash still on the shelf. Because we grow a lot of our own food and we preserve a lot, we always tend to have a lot of food on hand. So in here, this is one of our pantries. And we've got a whole bunch of canned goods still. I mean, our supplies are running lower because, of course, we're into the spring already. But we still got lots there, kind of basic. We keep a lot of basic staples on hand. So avocado oil, which I use to make mayo and dressings and things, olive oils. We've got in all those big jugs up there, that's all apple cider vinegar that I've made. Coconut oil. And then in here, we've got kind of all of our dry goods. So again, my philosophy, in good times and bad, is to stock up on staple items that are versatile and that you can transform into a bunch of different things. So we have, you know, our flour and our sugar and some steel cut oats, brown sugar. There's some pickling salt and apple cider vinegar, more apple cider vinegar for canning because it's store-bought. Chocolate chips, things that we can transform into different things, breads and treats and things like that. Coconut oil and baking ingredients and stuff like that. Coffee. If you're a coffee drinker, stock up on coffee because, again, that's something that would have to be traded. It would have to come from somewhere else. And you don't want to run out of that. So we actually have 3 extra bags. There's another one up top. And got to have the temptations. Can't forget about the pets. That's something important. If you got pets, make sure that you have enough food and litter or anything else like that you need for them. Over here, the freezer, we still have, it's pretty full. Lots of fruit that is still frozen in there from last year. Tons of tomatoes that I still have to process. There's still 9 bags of tomatoes, so I'm going to do that soon to free up some space in the freezer. And then down here, because we get our meat in bulk from a local farmer, we've got a whole bunch of like ground beef and different cuts of meat and stuff still left. So as far as food, we're not really stocking up on anything that we wouldn't stock up on anyway. I'm just making sure that if we need certain things to replace certain things, or we want to make sure that we have certain staples on hand, that I'm stocking up now. So I bought some extra butter the other night, which freezes really well because I use butter in so much of our baking and cooking. And bought a bag of onions because we're out of those because I use that for cooking a lot. Just some basic things that we wanted to make sure that we stock up on. But again, we'd be stocking back up on this stuff anyway. I'm just making sure that I do that now and maybe buy 1 or 2 extra just in case we are kind of stuck at home. The other thing that we did that this kind of prompted us to do when we did our January pantry challenge and went through our pantry inventory and looked at all the food that we had, I did realize that one thing that we had not thought enough about was having water stored on hand. Now, it is never a bad idea to have bottled water on hand in an emergency where, say, the taps turn off or the electricity turns off and you're on a well and you can't get water. That has happened where I live before. So it's certainly not a bad idea, and it's something that we wanted to make sure that we did this year. And this just prompted us to do that because we hadn't done it yet. So not that I think that we're going to, lose our running water. We haven't seen any cases of this coronavirus anywhere to suggest that the power and the water or anything like that would be shut off. But you just don't know if there are massive quarantines and people have to stay home and there's nobody to man the systems or, keep the power on type of thing and keep the water flowing, then your water, you could find that you don't have any running water. You just don't know. And that's what being prepared is all about, is being prepared that anything is possible. So we wanted to make sure that we had water on hand in case of an emergency. So what we did was we didn't go buy a bunch of bottled water from the store. I don't love that. I don't love using plastic if I don't have to. And I don't really love storing water in plastic because of anything that's in the plastic that may leach into the water. So it's not my preferred way to store water. I like to store it in glass bottles, and that's what we do. We have 3 bottles always full in our fridge that I just pour from the tap just so that they're always there, right? Just that we always have those on hand. We always top them up when they run low. And a friend of ours had a bunch of those swing top beer bottles that he wasn't using anymore and asked if we wanted them. So they've been sitting there empty because we make kombucha and a whole bunch of other things that we would use those bottles for. We hadn't used them yet, and we had a whole bunch of them, so we thought, well, they're going to sit there anyway. We may as well put water in them, and they can sit there and have like a backup water supply in them. So right here is where we're storing them all. They were sitting here anyway, so like I say, we just have used these bottles, and we sterilize them just like you would a mason jar if you're canning. And then we boiled the water and put the boiled water in there so that we have some backup drinking water just in case. There's 24 bottles there. And then we have a rain barrel. So if we needed to use water for our garden or for flushing our toilet or for sanitary reasons, we could use that water as well. So, but other than that, we're not really doing anything to prepare necessarily. I feel like we're pretty well prepared already, which is the point of preparedness, right? Is to prepare when times are good so that if something happens that we already have what we need on hand. But otherwise, I'm just kind of trying to stay positive and stop from kind of getting sucked into the fear and anxiety of it all, because it can be really easy to get feeling really anxious about this kind of stuff if we pay too close attention to the news, or if we kind of get sucked into the vortex of social media and go down that rabbit hole, right? Obviously, there's a lot of fear and anxiety being spread through social media right now. And I think that we have to just take it all with a grain of salt. Definitely know where you're getting your news from and your information from, and get it from a trusted source, and just not get kind of sucked into that negativity, and just take a step away from it sometimes, right? I've found even this morning, it's a beautiful sunny day outside. I don't know if you can hear that, but the birds are chirping. It is still spring and it's gorgeous out. And so just getting outside in the sunshine and enjoying the daffodils and the spring blooms and everything that's coming up, getting some fresh air out just in our yard, and then just doing things that I enjoy and that bring me kind of peace and peace of mind. So for example, baking, right? Baking bread. I've got some bread rising right now, and gardening. I've been planting more seedlings. So doing things, creating things really helps me to feel more in control. Whether it's something I am making with my hands or cooking or growing, it not only brings me a sense of kind of peace and calm and is really relaxing for me, but I also feel like I'm being productive and I'm adding to my preparedness by, preparing food, baking bread, practicing skills, growing things. So I feel like I'm contributing to our overall preparedness and doing something productive while at the same time relaxing and just kind of taking a load off by just doing something that I enjoy doing. So I encourage you to do the same and to not get sucked into just reading the news and being fearful of what's happening right now, because that is not really helpful to anyone. But I would love to know more about what you are doing to prepare, and if you are doing anything at all. So definitely leave me a comment below and let me know what what, if anything, you're doing to prepare for a possible coronavirus outbreak near you, or if you're already dealing with it, if you live somewhere where there are already quarantines or you're already feeling the effects of it, and yeah, what you're doing to kind of just get prepared. As well, if you'd like to learn more, I will drop a link below to an article I just wrote about what you really should stock up on in the event of a coronavirus outbreak, in the event of a quarantine or anything like that, so that if you'd like a little bit more information on what you should make sure to have on hand, then you can check that out as well. So I will drop that link below, and I will see you back here again soon.